thing that strikes me is this was a moment that really changed the relationship between the U.S. and China. And I've lived in China about over the last 20 years. And you know, President Nixon is revered in China. So many people see the betterment of their lives as directly attributable to his efforts and what they would call his wisdom. And this has a very direct effect in some ways on my own work. When I had a meeting a little over a year ago with an assistant minister of foreign affairs, he spent the first few minutes describing you know, his experience in the Nixon visit when he was a young high school student, and he was called out of school to go with his class to sweep the road of the snow going up to the Great Wall. And his reflection was that you know, because of the snow, which is not terribly common in Beijing at the time, he said, you know, we just wanted to make sure that the motorcade had no mishaps, no accidents, and everything went smoothly for this trip because it was so important. And I think that's a legacy that's reflected throughout the U.S.-China relationship. And as I said, you know, you've got assistant foreign ministers with these very fond relationships. At the Nixon Center, the ambassador to China at the time came to give a talk, and we have a photograph on the wall of Deng Xiaoping meeting with President Nixon after he left the White House. And the ambassador stops and looks and says, "Hey, look, that's me." And it's a young man standing between them, or sitting between them, and he was their translator. So I think President Nixon's legacy in China is very strong to this day. I'm also struck, as we heard that narrative, that the U.S.-China relationship this year has been, I think, in the dumps. I mean, there's just no way we can you know, smile at this relationship so far. Starting in January, mill-mill relations were cut off. There's been great tension. There's been a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot going on inside China politically. They've got a party congress coming up in 2 years. They have a major political transition that I think, much the way it does here, their domestic politics are trumping their foreign policy. And certainly in terms of rhetoric, it's not always rational, but it is what it is. But the relationship has been pretty strained up until about September. And what we had was a number of folks, just like our speakers earlier, you know, NSC staffers, went out to China in September, had meetings with President Hu Jintao. Normally, NSC staffers aren't going to go and get meetings with the president, but that was a sign of respect. And the Chinese really wanted to send a message to the White House that things were going to get better. And one of the direct consequences of that event in September was a warming of relations and a glimmer of hope that things would get better. And actually, we've now had some very quiet announcements that President Hu Jintao will visit the United States probably in January of this year, which will mark a pretty significant moment in U.S.-China relations today. We've also had word that military-to-military relations are about to restart. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates was invited to go to China after being snubbed earlier in the year in his planned visit. And that's another signal that the Chinese military is seeking to build some strategic trust, because at the moment there's significant strategic mistrust between the United States and China. And the fact that we've got a presidential visit coming up from China, the fact that we've got military-to-military relations restarting, shows that we're going to start to get back on an upward trajectory for the bilateral relationship after about 9 months of a very, very difficult period. So the importance of this type of high-level symmetry and active management of the bilateral relationship is as relevant today as it was in 1971 and 72. So